Welcome to Horrified Stories, where fear comes to life. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. Let's start our today's story. My sleep tracker recorded something terrifying last night. I've always struggled with sleep insomnia, vivid dreams, and the occasional sleepwalking episode. For months, I've been trying different remedies, white noise, melatonin, meditation, you name it. Nothing worked. That's when a friend recommended a sleep tracker. It's not just for data, she said. It'll show patterns, maybe even help you figure out why you're waking up so tired. The idea seemed harmless, even helpful. Little did I know, it would lead me to a discovery that still keeps me awake at night. I bought the device, a sleek little wristband synced to an app on my phone. It monitored everything: heart rate, breathing, movement, and even ambient sounds while I slept. That night, I set it up, eager to see the results in the morning. Falling asleep was as difficult as ever. I tossed and turned, feeling the weight of the tracker on my wrist. Eventually, I drifted off, surrendering to the strange comfort of knowing my sleep or lack thereof is being recorded. The next morning, I opened the app. The interface was clean, full of graphs and colorful charts. It showed that I'd slept a total of 4 hours, broken into fragments. But one thing stood out: a spike in movement and heart rate around 3 a.m. Weird, but not alarming. Probably just a bad dream, I thought. The second night, I noticed something unsettling. Along with sleep data, the tracker recorded audio when it detected noise. Curious, I scrolled through the files and pressed play on a clip marked 3:02 a.m. The recording started with a soft sound of my breathing, steady and slow. Then came a faint creak, like the floorboards shifting under weight. I frowned. See, I live alone. Trying to rationalize, I told myself it was just the house settling or a random noise from outside. But deep down, something fell off. That night, I decided to keep my bedroom door locked. The app flagged multiple disturbances around the same time between 3 and 3:10 a.m. My heart raced as I played the audio clips. The first was similar to the night before, creaking sounds, followed by silence. The second was different. This time, there was something else, a faint whisper. I replayed the clip, turning the volume up. The whisper was low, almost inaudible, but there, a single word: watch. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. By now, I was convinced something was happening, whether it was a prank, sleepwalking, or something worse. I needed answers. I set up a small camera in the corner of my bedroom, angled to capture the entire room, including the bed and the door. The fourth night, I lay in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, hyper-aware of every sound. The faint glow of the camera's indicator light was both reassuring and unnerving. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me under. The next morning, I woke up feeling more drained than ever. My chest felt tight, my limbs heavy. The sleep tracker showed the now familiar disturbances at 3 a.m. But this time, I had video evidence. I opened the footage with shaking hands. The first hour was uneventful. I lay still, occasionally shifting in my sleep. Then, at 3:02 a.m., the door to my bedroom opened. My breath hitched. I locked it. The video showed the door swinging open slowly. Without a sound, a shadowy figure stepped into the room. It didn't look like a person at all. Too thin, its limbs unnaturally long. The figure moved closer to the bed, its face just out of view, and stood there, watching me. I scrubbed through the footage, praying it would disappear, but it didn't. The figure remained by my bed until 3:10 a.m., when it stepped back and vanished into the shadows. I paused the video and stared at the screen, my heart pounding. My mind raced with questions. How did it get in? What did it want? And why didn't I wake up? But the most horrifying question of all was the one I couldn't bring myself to answer. Had it been here before? I couldn't stay in the house that night. I packed a bag and checked into a hotel, but even there, I couldn't escape the paranoia. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of wind outside the window felt like a sign. I decided to dig deeper. I uploaded the video to my computer, enhancing the frame where the figure's face should have been. The image was grainy, but something became clear. Its face wasn't human. It didn't have eyes, just hollow sockets where they should have been. Its mouth was wide, impossibly wide, as if it was caught mid-laugh. The next recording from my sleep tracker was even worse. After seeing the footage, I didn't return home. The hotel room offered no comfort, but at least the idea for solid walls and a locked door felt marginally safer. I still wore the sleep tracker that night, desperate to know if whatever had appeared in my house would follow me here. The night passed uneventful, or so I thought. The next morning, I checked the app. My sleep was restless, punctuated by brief spikes in heart rate and movement around 3 a.m. No audio clips were recorded, but that didn't make me feel any better. When I reviewed the footage from my makeshift camera, the room seemed normal until 3:04 a.m. That's when the light flickered. It wasn't just a power surge. The light dimmed and brightened in an odd rhythm, as if it were responding to something unseen. Nothing entered the room, but somehow, the footage felt wrong. The longer I watched, the more certain I became that something was there, just out of sight. That afternoon, I contacted a sleep specialist. I didn't share everything, just enough to make it seem like I was seeking medical advice. I described the disturbances, the restless sleep, and the strange sense of being watched. "Have you ever been diagnosed with sleep paralysis?" the specialist asked. "No," I replied, "but I'm not imagining this." She nodded, unfazed. "Sometimes extreme stress or exhaustion can lead to hallucinations during sleep. It's her brain's way of processing fear." Her words were meant to reassure me, but they didn't. I wasn't imagining it. The footage, the audio, it was real. Before I left, she suggested a sleep study. Desperate for answers, I agreed. The sleep study was set up in a controlled environment, with electrodes monitoring my brain activity and cameras recording every angle of the room. It felt invasive, but I was willing to do whatever it took to figure out what was happening. The technicians instructed me to relax. Though I doubted that was possible, I lay in the sterile bed, staring at the ceiling. Despite the fear gnawing at me, I eventually fell asleep. When I woke, I felt worse than ever. My body ached, and my throat was dry, as if I'd been screaming. The technicians seemed uneasy as they unhooked the equipment. "What happened?" I asked. The lead technician hesitated. "You had some unusual activity during the night. We need to review the footage." Later that day, the technician called me back into the office. He looked pale, his demeanor far less clinical than before. "During the study, your heart rate spiked several times," he said. "At one point, you sat up in bed and stared at the camera for nearly 10 minutes before lying back down." I frowned. "See, I don't remember doing that." He nodded. "Sleepwalking is common in cases like yours, but there's something else." He turned the monitor toward me, showing the footage. Sure enough, I saw myself sitting upright in bed, staring directly into the camera. My face was blank, my eyes glassy, but that wasn't the worst part. At 3:03 a.m., a shadow appeared behind me. It didn't move like a person. It stretched unnaturally across the wall, twisting and shifting. At one point, the shadow extended a long, spindly arm toward my shoulder but stopped just short of touching me. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. "We've never seen anything like this," the technician admitted. "We recommend speaking with a specialist in parasomnia or even a neurologist." But I knew this wasn't a medical condition. That night, I returned to the hotel, terrified of what I'd see if I slept. But exhaustion overtook me, and I fell into a restless slumber. At 3 a.m., I woke to a faint noise. The room was pitch dark, but the sound of whispering filled the air. Watch! I bolted upright, fumbling for the light. The room was empty. My heart pounded as I grabbed my phone and checked the sleep tracker. The app had recorded a single audio clip. With shaking hands, I pressed play. It started with the sound of my breathing, steady but shallow. Then came the whisper, louder this time. "We're watching." A sudden banging noise ended the recording. The next morning, I found something on the floor near the foot of the bed. It was a scrap of paper, old and yellowed, with a single word scrawled across it: "Live." I ran out of the hotel without checking out, leaving everything behind except my phone and the sleep tracker. I didn't know where to go or who to turn to. Every rational explanation crumbled under the weight of the evidence. In desperation, I visited a local paranormal investigator. The investigator, a grizzled man named Carl, listened to my story without interrupting. When I showed him the footage, he leaned back in his chair, his face grim. "You're being marked," he said. "Marked? By what?" "Something ancient, something that doesn't belong in our world." He pointed to the shadowy figure in the video. "It's watching you, waiting for the right moment. If it's already crossed into your physical space, you're in danger." "What can I do?" Carl shook his head. "It's not about what you can do. It's about what it wants." That night, I noticed a faint mark on my wrist, a dark bruise in the shape of a hand. The sleep tracker buzzed with a new notification. Unusual activity detected. 3 a.m. I couldn't stop staring at my wrist. The dark hand-shaped bruise wasn't just a mark, it felt like a warning. Or worse, a claim. The skin was cold to the touch, and no amount of rubbing or washing would make it fade. I tried convincing myself it was a coincidence. Maybe I'd bumped into something in my sleep, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The sleep tracker's notification confirmed it. Whatever this was, it was escalating. Desperate for answers, I called Carl, the paranormal investigator, and told him about the mark. "That's not a good sign," he said gravely. "It means it's getting stronger, more connected to you. Have you noticed anything else? Objects moving, strange sensations?" "No," I lied. I didn't want to admit how often I felt like I was being watched, even in broad daylight. Carl insisted on meeting me at his office later that day. When I arrived, he had a stack of old books spread across his desk. "This isn't just a haunting," he explained. "It's something much older, a watcher." "A watcher?" He nodded. "They're entities that exist between worlds. They attach themselves to people who've unknowingly drawn their attention, usually through curiosity, fear, or using devices that monitor what shouldn't be monitored." I thought of the sleep tracker. "You mean it's watching me because of the tracker?" "Partly," Carl said, "but the tracker didn't create it. It just revealed what was already there." He opened one of the books to an old illustration of a shadowy figure with hollow eyes and unnaturally long limbs. "The mark on your wrist means it's claiming you. The more you engage with it, be recording, watching, or even thinking about it, the stronger it becomes." "So, what do I do?" "First, you need to destroy anything that connects it to you. The tracker, your phone, the footage, it all has to go. And second, you have to sever its link before it crosses fully into your world. If it does." He didn't finish the sentence, but the look in his eyes said enough. That night, I gathered everything related to the sleep tracker, the device, my phone with the app, and the camera I'd used to record my room. Carl had instructed me to destroy them immediately, but curiosity got the better of me. I decided to listen to the latest audio file the tracker had recorded. It was marked 3 a.m. The clip started with the sound of my breathing, but it was slower than usual, almost labored. Then came a low, rumbling growl, like something heavy shifting in the room. Finally, there was a voice, a deeper, more menacing than before. "You're ours." My blood ran cold. The recording ended with a sharp, metallic scraping sound, as if something was being dragged across the floor. I didn't wait any longer. I took the tracker, the phone, and the camera to the backyard of Carl's office, where he had prepared a metal drum for burning. One by one, I threw the items into the flames. The tracker melted quickly, its screen bubbling and cracking. The camera followed, its plastic casing releasing a sickly, acrid smoke. But when I threw in the phone, the fire flared unnaturally. Bright green flames shot up, and the air filled with an ear-piercing scream. I stumbled back, covering my ears. Carl grabbed my arm. "That's it, fighting back. Don't look away." The fire roared higher for a moment, then died down, leaving nothing but charred remains. "Is it over?" I asked, my voice trembling. "No," Carl said grimly. "That was just the first step." Carl explained that to sever the Watcher's connection, I would need to perform a cleansing ritual. It wasn't something he could do, for Meth entity was tied to me, and I had to confront it myself. The ritual required three things. 1. A personal object with sentimental value. 2. A circle of salt to protect me during the process. 3. A mirror to reflect the Watcher's true form. We gathered the materials, and Carl walked me through the steps. "Once you start, you can't stop. No matter what it shows you, no matter what you feel, you have to finish." "What happens if I don't?" Carl didn't answer. That night, I returned to my house. The air inside felt heavy, oppressive, as if the walls themselves were closing in. I set up the ritual in the living room, placing my grandfather's old pocket watch, most sentimental thing I owned, inside the circle of salt. The mirror leaned against the wall, facing me. I lit the candles and began the chant Carl had given me. The words were strange, ancient, and felt unnatural in my mouth. At first, nothing happened. Then, the room grew colder, and the shadows seemed to stretch and move. I kept chanting, my voice shaking. The mirror's surface rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. Slowly, a figure began to appear. The Watcher was even more terrifying than I'd imagined. Its form was shadowy and indistinct, but its hollow eyes were fixed on me, and its unnaturally white grin stretched far beyond what should be possible. It didn't speak, but I felt its voice in my mind. "You can't escape." The air grew heavier, pressing down on my chest. The candles flickered, and the salt circle began to waver. I clutched the pocket watch and repeated the chant louder, forcing the words out through my fear. The Watcher stepped closer, its elongated limbs reaching toward me. "You don't belong here," I screamed, pouring every ounce of my will into the chant. The mirror cracked. The Watcher let out a deafening screech, its form distorting and twisting as the cracks spread. With one final, guttural roar, it shattered into pieces. The house fell silent. The air felt lighter. The oppressive weight lifted. The mark on my wrist was gone, leaving only faint redness behind. I clutched the shard, the final piece of its anchor, and continued the chant. The Watcher lunged at me, but the salt circle held, keeping it at bay. With a final shout, I smashed the shard against the mirror. Both shattered in an explosion of light and sound, and the Watcher let out an ear-piercing scream as its form dissolved into nothingness. When the light faded, I was alone. The mirror and shard were gone, reduced to fine dust. The air felt lighter, and for the first time in weeks, I felt truly free. But as I left the room, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a window. For a brief moment, I thought I saw the Watcher's hollow eyes staring back at me. I told myself it was just my imagination. Weeks passed, and for the first time in months, I felt free. The air in my house was lighter, the night silent and uneventful. Carl assured me the box containing the shard and the Watcher's essence was locked away in a secure location, buried in a place no one would ever find. I started to rebuild my life, trying to forget the sleepless nights, the whispers, and the entity's hollow eyes. But the scars it left in my mind and my soul were harder to erase. One cold evening, as I was walking home, a chill ran down my spine. The streets were deserted, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. I told myself it was just paranoia, a lingering trauma from everything I'd been through. But then I heard it, a faint whisper carried on the wind. You thought you were free. I frowned, see, my breath visible in the icy air. The streetlights flickered, and for a brief moment, the shadows seemed to move. The next morning, I called Carl. Something's wrong, I said, pacing the kitchen. I heard it again, the watcher. That's impossible, Carl replied. The ritual worked. The box is secure. Check it, I demanded. Reluctantly, Carl agreed. He promised to call me back after he verified everything was as it should be. Hours later, my phone rang. Carl's voice was tight with panic. The box is gone. Carl arrived at my house later that night, carrying a stack of old books and looking more frazzled than I'd ever seen him. It doesn't make sense, he said. The box was sealed, buried under layers of protection. There's no way it could have been disturbed. Unless someone took it, I said, my stomach sinking. Carl's expression darkened. Or unless it never really left you. We delved deeper into the Watcher's origins, piecing together fragmented accounts and ancient texts. What we found chilled me to the bone. The Watcher wasn't just a wandering entity, it was a parasite, feeding off fear and attention. The ritual may have temporarily severed its hold, but as long as I existed, so did it. You're not just its host, Carl said. You're its anchor. There was only one way to end it. Carl and I prepared a final ritual, one that would destroy the Watcher completely, but the cost was steep. It would require a sacrifice in it of another person, but of a part of myself. This will sever the bond permanently, Carl explained, but it will also take something from you, memories, emotions, maybe even a piece of your soul. I didn't hesitate. Let's do it. We set up the ritual in the forest, far from any prying eyes. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the circle of salt and symbols we had drawn. At the center was an unbroken mirror, reflecting the moonlight and the shard Carl had recovered. I stood in the middle, clutching an item of deep personal significance, my late mother's locket. It was the tether that would keep me grounded during the ritual. Carl began the chant, his voice steady and firm. The air grew colder, the trees whispering as if alive. The Watcher appeared. It was larger than before, its shadowy form towering over us. Its hollow eyes burned with fury, and its voice boomed like thunder. You cannot destroy me. The salt circle flared, holding it in place as Carl continued the chant. I gripped the locket tightly, pouring every ounce of strength into resisting the Watcher's pull. It fought back, clawing at the edges of the circle, its form twisting and writhing. The ground beneath me shook, and the air crackled with energy. You belong to me, it roared. No, I said, my voice steady. Not anymore. With a final shout, I smashed the shard against the mirror. The explosion of light and sound was deafening, and the Watcher let out a guttural scream as its form disintegrated into nothingness. When the light faded, the forest was silent. The circle was gone, the salt scattered, and the mirror reduced to dust. Carl helped me to my feet. It's over, he said, his voice tinged with relief. But as we left the clearing, I felt different. A strange emptiness lingered, as if a part of me had been left behind. Months passed, and life returned to a fragile normalcy. The Watcher was gone, its presence no longer haunting my every step. But every now and then, in the stillness of the night, I thought I heard it, just a faint whisper, barely audible. You'll never forget. I told myself it was just a memory, but deep down, I couldn't help but wonder if the Watcher had truly been destroyed or if a part of it would always remain. Waiting? If you like this story, don't forget to hit the like button, share and subscribe the channel. Help us grow. Thanks for watching.